So good afternoon and welcome to the Professional Development Virtual Conference. This is a collaborative effort by CalU and Clarion Career and Professional Development Centers. My colleague Mark Conrad from Clarion and myself, Chrissy Doppelheimer from CalU, are pleased and excited to be hosting today's session on interviewing. This is the 5th of 9 professional development sessions you can attend this week. A few things before we get started. All of the presentations are being recorded and those recordings will be shared with the attendees. We'll only be sharing the presenter video and the slides on the recording. The meeting will be locked, so after a few minutes here, we will lock down the meeting. Your audio will be muted, so if you do have any questions, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that you have at any time. They may be answered during the session, but if not, we will wait to complete those at the end. At the conclusion of our session today, there will be an online survey that we're asking you to complete. And I think, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, if you do complete your survey for Clarion, you get a beach towel. At CalU, we're putting you in for a drawing for an Amazon gift card. So just want to share that detail with you. And then it's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers today. So we have two lovely ladies joining us. We have Chelsea Ewing from Allegheny Health Network at St. Vincent Hospital. Welcome. And Nikki Staley from Cosmeto Digital. So welcome both of you ladies. If I could ask both Nikki first to give a quick introduction, followed by Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, my name is Nikki Staley. I am the owner and creative director of Cosmeto, and we are a digital marketing agency in downtown Pittsburgh. I'm also a grad of Clarion, and I grew up in the area too, so I'm very familiar with the campus at Clarion.
And hi everyone, I'm Chelsea Ewing. I'm a 2015 graduate from the Communications School at Clarion. Really excited to be here. I'm really excited that you guys are putting in the effort to, really hone your professional development skills, and I hope you find this useful today. I grew up in the Erie area. After I graduated from Clarion, I moved to Pittsburgh for 5 years, and last August I moved up to Erie for an opportunity at the hospital with Allegheny Health Network.
Thank you so much. That's great information. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you would like to view the screen with just speaker view, that way you can only see the person who's speaking and not all of the attendees on your screen. But if you want to put on speaker view, that way you can just see the speaker only. And we will get started first with Nikki sharing some tips for you all.
Can you let Taylor in the meeting? She's trying to get in. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes. There we are. I think everyone's now admitted. So here we go. Thank you for that.
All right. So as I said, I am the owner and creative director of Cosmeto. So at some point, I interview everybody that is employed at the company. So I've conducted a lot, and what I wanted to do today is to share some tips from during the interview of some of my most successful. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started. My first and probably my favorite tip is to make it conversational and to be in the moment. If you think about it, you probably remember stories or conversations more than just a question-answer scenario, question-answer, question-answer. So for me, I love when an interviewee can give me a thought-provoking answer so that the interview goes in a conversation style. Like I just keep asking questions based on the answer rather than just sitting there with a set of questions and going through them and doing a question answer. On the other side of that is being in the moment. I think I can tell when some interviewees are thinking about what they're going to say to me instead of really listening. I think if you take the time, listen to the question, and then give a thought-provoking answer, that is what is going to put you ahead of your pack in your job search. So next, I want to also offer the tip is to be yourself and don't get too caught up in being or saying what you think the company wants to hear or your interviewer wants to hear. I'm sharing this one too because I know I've been guilty of researching a company, looking at all the current employees' social media, studying the job posting into the description to the point where I have the story created in my head of what the company is looking for. However, what they're really looking for is to get a little bit about who you are. Generally, your resume, your cover letter, your portfolio will prove that you can do the job, but the interview is there to confirm that information and to get to know you a little bit more. So with that, just be yourself and remember not to be who you think they want you to be. Next, I always encourage interviewees to share your successes and prove that you can fulfill the need of the company. So if you think about it, companies are holding interviews and hiring employees because they have a need. If you can identify that need and then prove that you have successes that can help them with that need, that is key in an interview. So for example, think of it this way. Did you happen to manage a club social media account and increase it by 15%? And maybe you're joining a company to work on marketing. Share that success to prove that you accomplished it, that you did something with a club, you took initiative, but you also accomplished a big statistic. Okay, and then next, and this is something that I look for personally, so I really encourage you to do your research on the company with this tip. But one thing I really encourage, especially younger interviewees, is to not shy away from your soft skills and don't let your hard skills hide your soft skills. So what does that mean? So your soft skills are things like being organized, being able to communicate, being a team leader or a team player. And your hard skills are being able to work with certain software, being able to design something, etc. So what I really look for, especially in entry-level jobs and for interns, are people that can really explain and showcase their soft skills. So for me, I'm really looking for people that are self-starters, that are team players, that are organized. And if you can prove that to me in an interview, that's really appealing to me. Now, that's not to downplay the hard skills. Like if you can use Adobe, the Adobe suite, I would love to hear that. But in the way I look at it, that's something I can also teach you. So what I really want you to take away from that is not to hide those hard skills, but don't come into the interview too strongly and not think that those soft skills are important. Because in my opinion, especially for younger interviewees, I really look for those. And then, so for my last tip, and this one is also very, very important, I really encourage you to do your research and always ask questions at the end of your interview, or even during if you have questions. So you can look at this tip in two ways. First, your potential employer will understand that you're prepared for the interview and you're truly interested in the company. And then second, it's an opportunity for you to decide if the company is a good fit for you. You know, that's one thing I do encourage people to think about when they're interviewing. Yes, the interview is for the employer to see if you are a good fit, but you also have the opportunity to interview the company to understand that you will be happy working there and it would be a good fit for you. So yeah, those are my main tips. Does anybody have any questions before I turn it over to Chelsea?
I have a question based off of when you say to ask them questions, what would be like a good question to ask versus like a question that they've heard before or that everyone goes to?
Yeah, so in my experience, I always hear the one question I get is, when is your timeline to making a hiring decision? Like a question like that is not one that really makes me think that you've done a lot of research into. You're just eager to know what's going on, but that's a good housekeeping question at the same time. But I wouldn't let that be your only one. One that I always enjoy, I'll give you two that I always enjoy. One is, and it's a bold question and not a lot of people like to hear the answer to it sometimes, is ask if there's any reason they wouldn't hire you. One, that proves that you're bold and you're able to take feedback. And two, it'll help you for your next interview. And then another one I really like is an interviewee asked me what were some challenges the person in the previous position had and how did I help them overcome it. So that question to me was that they understand that some work's going to go into this position and that they're also willing to ask for help, take feedback, and work together and be a team player. That was a good question. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
Good. I don't see any additional questions just
Okay.
now, but if you do along the way, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat also. That way, if we do have additional questions, we'll have them available to read as well. But thank you so much, Nikki. Good information. Thank you for sharing. And then if we can turn over now to Chelsea to share additional tips that she has.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, so I was brought into this panel because I have a background in campus recruiting. So I've recruited with PNC, UPMC, and Allegheny Health Network from a campus recruiting perspective. So in my roles at those organizations, I would recruit and interview interns, associate for rotation programs, and individuals for full-time roles as well. So like Nikki, we both have some pretty good experience. We've kind of heard a good amount of questions, seen some things, heard some things like that. So we wanted to share what our best tips and tricks were for you guys so you're set up for success come May or come next week if you have an interview. So I kind of wanted to take you through the before, during, and after. Nikki made some really good points about during the interview, but I think the before and after is almost just as important as the during the interview. So some things before the interview, and you might think some of these are kind of obvious, but we get busy, right? We get busy with schoolwork. We get busy with our lives outside of school and or work that we forget about some of these small details that can make a really big difference on the day of the interview. So, things like practicing your interview. So obviously you want to practice your questions. You want to kind of jot some notes down for some of your answers as a reminder. But two, you might want to do this in the attire that you're going to be wearing to your interview. It's not every day that I wear a suit, whether that's a skirt or pants. I don't know if that's still fitting after the quarantine 15, right? So I want to make sure I'm comfortable when I go to this interview. So do that in the attire that you pick out ahead of time. That way, one, you don't have to pick out your outfit day of, and two, you know that you're going to be comfortable. That way you can just focus on the interview and having that conversation with the interviewees. Practicing your interview and preparing yourself goes hand in hand. So let's say your interview is in downtown Pittsburgh and you're from a place like Erie, like where I'm from, and maybe you've never been to downtown Pittsburgh. You might want to practice the commute, where you're going to park, because let's say your interview is at 8:30. That's rush hour. You never know what you're going to run into, whether that's an accident on 79, there's no parking spaces left near the building you need to go to. So just planning those types of things can make a huge difference. Again, so you're not stressing about those minor details. You can just be prepared and focus on your interview. Print out multiple copies of your resume. You never know who has your resume. You never know if somebody's filling in for someone because they are sick or have a family emergency. You just never know what situation you're walking into with that interview. So coming prepared with your resume, coming prepared with a portfolio. I know Nikki talked about that in a session yesterday. Whatever you can do to really sell yourself and make yourself look prepared. Maybe there's some things you want to reference in your interview, like your portfolio. Maybe you put together a documentary in a comm class and you want to just showcase a minute of that during your interview. Whatever it may be, bring that with you, put it in your Padfolio, have that prepared a day ahead of time. I know Nikki alluded to doing your research, and she mentioned that that can go a couple different ways. I always like when an interviewee is prepared and they know the new news that's happening with our organization. For instance, with Allegheny Health Network, we just did the ribbon cutting for our new academic cancer center in the north side of Pittsburgh. And so I want to know that people did some research about that. Hey, is this team going to be working with any of the teams that are just starting at that academic cancer center? How are we affected by that? Or maybe there was the consent decree with the healthcare between a couple different competitors in Pittsburgh. You know, how does that affect our team and the way we work? So those types of questions, I think, make me realize that one, you're genuinely interested in the role, and two, you have in fact done your research. I know a lot are virtual right now, so you're probably thinking, well, I may not be hopping in the car and driving to a downtown of some sort of city. But I do think it's good to prepare from a virtual perspective. So making sure your computer's charged and or plugged in, making sure that your camera works or that you even have a camera. You know, again, picking out your outfit ahead of time. My husband swears by wearing a full suit from top to bottom, dress socks, dress shoes, and the key, brushing your teeth right before the interview. So that's worked out pretty well for him so far, but it's those little types of details, again, making sure your internet connection is good, making sure your puppy isn't barking in the background. All those types of things really play into that atmosphere of your interview. A couple different things during your interview. I love the be yourself. We're hiring you for you. The hard skills are great, like we talked about, but are you going to fit the culture of the organization? And we're not going to find that out unless you bring yourself to the interview. So that is something a lot of companies are looking for. Culture is a huge priority in many organizations these days, as it is for, I think, us as millennials and whatever generation you guys are, maybe. But you know, I think it's a huge priority in a lot of us right now. So we want to make sure that one, we're a fit, like Nikki said, but two, we're also a fit for the organization. One thing I know Nikki had mentioned that we want to know, you know, what are some of your top skills? And during the interview, I do want to know some of those top skills. And I want you to talk about all types of experiences that you've had, whether you've had a past internship or whether you were a waitress. Those are all valuable experiences that you can bring to the table. I think some people think, oh, I just worked at a local restaurant. You know, it's really not a big deal. I could never be a waitress if you paid me $1 million. That is some hard work. Give yourself some credit and really think about some of those skills that are transferable to an internship or a full-time job, because you could really sell yourself on just one position, thinking about all those transferable skills. But two, I've been in interviews where I've asked questions on, so where's an area of opportunity that you have? Not everybody's perfect. We all have things we need to work on. We all have some sort of weakness in us, right? So what is that? Be transparent, be bold, like Nikki said. We want to know, what are you going to work on from a skill perspective when you get here? And what are some things as a leader that I can help you with if you're joining my team? What can I expect from you joining my team? Let me see here. And questions, I know Nikki alluded to those as well. Definitely don't ask about the pay during your interview. I know that's what we're all thinking. I know, trust me, whether it's an hourly internship or a full-time job, we are all thinking it. Most of us probably wouldn't be working if we didn't get paid, right? We get it, but let's just leave that for down the road. It looks like you're kind of jumping the gun. It looks like you're not in it for the experience and things like that. So just leave that question out. You know, that will come down the road. You have a question here. Don't they usually ask in interview your idea on how much you should get paid? Like what an ideal salary is? Absolutely. Typically when a recruiter reaches out to you or you do get that initial contact from an organization, they are going to ask you some of your expectations. That way, you know, if you're thinking $20,000 more than what they can offer you, they probably won't proceed because they don't want to, one, waste your time and two, waste their own time. Nikki, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I would say that if it's like a first interview or a phone interview, you let the company take lead. Oh, sorry about that, guys. You let the company take lead on that topic. But I do think if you get into the point where you're getting into a second interview or a final interview and you still haven't had that conversation, that's when you're able to bring it up, would be my best advice on that.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, we pretty much covered the during the interview. Obviously, open to taking any questions about during or before, but I did want to touch on the after, because I think that that can also help you to really seal that deal. So, you know, during the interview, if you can, or if they do offer, get that business card. That way you have the contact information of the interviewer or interviewees. However, who doesn't love to get mail, right? When they're not bills, who does not love to get mail? So if you maybe forgot to ask for the card, they didn't have any, things like that, you can mail just a cute little thank you card in, you know, put their name on it and put the address of the organization. It will get there. It's always good to send a thank you, whether it's email or a hard thank you card. It's always good to thank people for their time. Everyone's very busy. And so it's just a good way as a reminder, like, hey, interviewed last week. I'm still very interested, but I really appreciate your time, really appreciated the advice, the conversation, things like that. I always appreciate people who add details, specific details from the interview. Maybe it was that we had a common interest in skiing. I don't know why that would come up in an interview, but if it ever did, we had some sort of common interest. Maybe you touch on that. Maybe we had similar backgrounds and you touch on that. So making it more personalized rather than just generalized thank you, I think just takes it a step further. You know, connect with those interviewees on LinkedIn. You never know, you know, maybe the opportunity doesn't work out. You never know what's going to happen in 3 months, 6 months. You never know who they could connect you with. Maybe they really liked you and you were, you know, you took second place. They could connect you with some of their connections. You just never know what can happen. I have actually gotten roles by people reaching out on LinkedIn. So you just never know the power of LinkedIn. So keep that updated, but also connect with the right people. Connect with the people that you've met with along this journey. And then last but not least, after you connect with them, foster those relationships. So reach out once in a while. You never know who's bound to get coffee. They could be a professional mentor to you, depending on, you know, how that experience went. So like I said, you just never know what can happen, but always take those right steps to do so. And I think that's all I have. Any questions?
I don't see questions in here, but I do have one I would love to ask. This goes back to both Nikki and Chelsea. I know, Nikki, you touched on this. If, let's say this interview is a two-way street, and I, as the candidate interviewee, decide I'm not interested in this position now that I've interviewed. What do you think is the best tip to let that employer know? So instead of them pursuing me, continue to pursue me, what would be the best thing to do?
I would this is a personal preference. I always enjoy when people finish the interview because, like I said, I like to keep my professional network, regardless if it works out or not in that minute. But then I would just follow, like when you would send that thank you email, thank them for that time, but then just be honest in that same follow-up that it's just not going to work out for you. But again, finish the interview, finish the conversation, make that connection so that you can have them in your professional network again, but just say, this is just not what I'm looking for today. And if you handle it that way and in a very professional way, there will be no burned bridges and you'll keep them in your network too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say too, in my time in campus recruiting, it was not rare for us as recruiters to ask you, what else are you wagering? You know, what other companies are you interviewing with? You know, what timeline do we have with you? That way we know that, you know, we could possibly lose you to another organization. So just being upfront about that as well. I know people have been in situations too, where you have to give an answer to one company, but you haven't heard back from another one. That's a decision you have to make yourself. You have to be respectful of the organization. I would say reaching out and just being honest with them and saying, I just really want to do what's best for me and my family and my career. You know, you can ask for an extension. I can't guarantee it'll always be granted to you, but just being honest, I think, is the best way to go.
Chelsea, can I ask you a question? I'll throw this to Nikki too. So we're doing an interview and we're doing it just like we are right now. How do you share resumes? Is it a good idea if I'm the applicant to have a resume that I can hit the share screen with you and discuss, or would you send that in advance? With all the changes and we're having less contact, what do you typically do? Do you say, would you send me your resume in advance so we can discuss, or do they pop it up on the screen? Or give us some ideas about the changing ways you're doing interviews as opposed to when I'd come to your office and we would talk and you'd give me a tour of the hospital or something like that.
Sure, I think that's a great question. I think Nikki could probably chime in too. But I would say that typically somebody from the organization would probably reach out ahead of time to have that and send it over to whoever's doing the interview. But have it up on your computer. I talked about being prepared for your interview, right? Have it at the bottom of your screen. If you need to pull it up and do a screen share, you have it there in your back pocket ready to go. But I would say probably most of the time, the organization, the recruiter, whoever you've been communicating with will reach out ahead of time or pull that from your application. I don't know, Nikki, if you've had any other experiences.
Yeah, I can actually, I did a virtual internship this summer. So that was probably my most recent round of interviewing. And I asked for a resume, a cover letter, and writing samples before I even communicated with them during the interview process. So I had all of that. I didn't ask for them to have it that day, but I did kind of walk through their resume, and I could tell most of them had it printed beside them because, you know, they're looking down as I'm walking through things. So as long as, you know, they reach out prior, make sure you give them all that resource prior to the virtual interview.
I think there's some questions.
Oh yeah, there are some questions in the chat.
Great questions, guys. Keep them coming.
Yeah. Oh, I can answer Morgan's question here that says, can you try going back to a company for a different job if you get denied from the first one? Or would that end up with you getting nothing back after applying? I mean, you could have improved. Yeah, that's a great question. And I will tell you from experience, I have interviewed the same person twice for the same job and they got it the second time, but not the first time. So if you are interested in the company and you're interested in that position, do not give up on it, because you never know who you're going to be interviewing against, what times have changed, etc. So keep pursuing if you're that interested in it. Absolutely.
I would completely agree with that. It just shows, it really hits home that you are genuinely interested in working at that company and organization. And two, you may have not just been you really might not have been the right fit for that role, or maybe you weren't qualified. It might not be that you bombed your interview or that, you know, they don't want you as a whole. Can you imagine a large organization saying no and never letting you come back? It would be foolish to do that. So I would say absolutely go for it. Now, I've also seen people apply to 36 jobs at the organization. That looks a little bit desperate, if I'm going to be bold and honest. You know, be strategic about what you're applying to. Are you qualified? Is this a role that you are genuinely interested in? So just try to be mindful of that, but I would absolutely interview again if you have the opportunity to. You can also take what you learned from the first one and apply it to the second one.
We have several questions about portfolios. Could you talk about those, how the format, what you're looking for in a portfolio, or is that even mandated today?
My best recommendation, or my best piece of advice for that, is to do your research into the company. I particularly, I will not hire anybody that does not at least provide a writing sample for me. I need to know that you can communicate clearly, because we're in an agency and we're constantly doing corporate communication. So I need that proof at least. But I always recommend having 2 different formats. I know Chelsea said to have a pad portfolio with you. I also recommend having an online portfolio. And I have taken both to interviews before. One, I've gotten, you know, internet service or hotspot on an iPad and had it up and ready to go. And especially if you're, I don't know quite the room, but if you have video assets or audio assets, you have to show those online. So have a digital copy, but yet if something crazy goes wrong with technology, you have that pad backup and you can still tell your story with some of the samples you have in there. So it's you know, and sometimes they don't even come up, but why not be prepared and put your best foot forward is my advice on that.
Absolutely. I would completely agree with that. I've had organizations keep my portfolio throughout the interview process. which gives me a little bit of anxiety because it's a lot of work, right? But you do always get that back. And I do think that, I know my experience is most of the time I have not had the opportunity to view those ahead of time. I kind of want the interviewee to talk to it, walk me through some of these projects. What was the reasoning behind it? You know, were you successful in this? Whatever it may be. Or if I'm very much a fan of the candidate following the interview, I will go through more of the portfolio, whether that's in person or online, to see, to just learn more about them. I see Maddie sent a question in about hospital settings. So if you guys don't mind, I was just going to touch on that. So Maddie, great question. Not sure what your major is, but I would say to get into healthcare, no matter the field, I'm not clinical. And I think the best way to do that is while you're attending Clarion or CalU, is to get experience in the hospital. So whether that's volunteering, getting a nursing assistant role, maybe you're working at the front desk of a clinic, whatever it may be, just so you start to understand the functionality of a clinical setting, the lingo in a clinical setting. Then you can also start to network with people who can then refer you to the right people. I just think having any sort of hospital experience is well received. That being said, I interned with UPMC 2 summers in a row and had no prior hospital setting experience. So just because you don't have any hospital experience, unless you're clinical, I would highly recommend doing that. But if you're not and you're just interested in that industry, go for it. They always, it's never necessarily a requirement. And if it is a requirement, it will say it in the qualifications. So, but I would say overall, no matter what you're going into, getting some sort of job, internship, volunteer opportunity at a hospital or some sort of clinical setting is the best way to go.
I see a question here about least favorite questions and apparel. So we're gonna, yeah. So let's talk about least favorite questions. I personally don't have any like least favorite questions, but my best advice here is to read the room and the person you're talking to. And I always say have a few prepared that are funny, almost like who would you have dinner with if they were any 3 people in the world, alive or dead, something like that. And then also something very specific, because I will give you this piece of advice. If you ever interview at my company, I will ask you weird questions like that at the end to get some of your personality. So I always just suggest have a wide range and just be prepared for anything and read the room, and you'll know what questions are right if you're prepared ahead of time. As far as apparel, I always say, and Chelsea, you tell me what you think, always plan for business professional, like full on, unless you're told otherwise. I have a casual dress code at my office, so I don't require you to wear a full suit to mine. I always just say in your email as we schedule it, come as you're comfortable. We'll all be in jeans and t-shirts. But I said, if that is not specified, straight professional is what I would do for apparel.
Agreed. And along with your apparel, be prepared for any type of weather. I interviewed a girl one time who did not have an umbrella, came in looking like she just went on a slip and slide, but crushed the interview. So be prepared in all aspects of your apparel. You don't want to be walking around in heels when it's icy, so those types of things. But I wouldn't say I have a least favorite question either. However, one thing that I do remember negatively is if I'm asking you situational questions and you continue to go back to a similar organization you worked with or one job or this, try to change up those situations. That way I know that you're able to be flexible in all types of situations, groups, personalities, things like that. Because if you continue to go back to one example over and over again, it just doesn't make me feel like your experience. And that's just my personal opinion. That might not be the case, but that's how it appears to me.
So there looks like there's a few other ones here, and I'm not sure. Nadia was looking at, have you ever interviewed not sure if anyone ever interviewed this way, but any tips for technical interviews? And I'm not sure, technical majors, or are you meaning technical like virtual type interviews? I'm not sure. So Nadia, if you want to add some additional information there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Morgan's asking, in an actual interview, would you say there's a need for makeup with a woman, or is it preferred that she would come with none on?
I think it's gonna, you do whatever makes you feel confident.
Mhm.
I would say less is more with makeup, and however you would wear your makeup to work. I think it's a way of expressing yourself. However, you have to be mindful of how it's being perceived from other people. But whatever's going to make you feel confident and good about yourself, go for it.
I completely agree with that. I think it goes back to bringing yourself to the interview, how you normally wear your makeup, or even if you don't wear makeup, that's who you are, and I want to see who you are. So
Absolutely. Computer science major.
Okay, so she's a technical major looking to see, show your skills via a panel interview.
We typically have to show our skills via a panel interview. Okay. So I've definitely been in a panel interview myself, but I've not had to show technical skills. I think when Nikki was talking about those hard skills, I think that that's where you really need to explain examples of how you've used them. Maybe a portfolio would be a good opportunity. Online portfolio would be a good opportunity for you to showcase some of your skills in those areas. I think every interview from a technical standpoint in computer science is going to look a little bit different, so it's hard to completely hone in on that. But I would say, again, from a preparation standpoint with your interview, make sure all those programs work, make sure your computer's charged, things like that. And I would say typically you would probably get some sort of direction ahead of time as to what the capabilities in the interview room is going to be and things like that. And then another preparation piece of advice is if you have specific projects or programs that you want to showcase, have those up ahead of time.
the only thing I would add to that too is do your research on the company, read their website and see what kind of lingo that they use and try to kind of speak their language in a technical standpoint. So read some more of their technical pages, their programs, and make sure you're up to speed and really can speak their language.
A panel interview is not easy. I won't sugarcoat that at all. Just make sure you're dividing equal attention amongst each interviewee. You're going to get questions from your left side, from your right side, from in front of you. So just be prepared. It may be a little bit overwhelming. So just know that ahead of time. But that's more people for you to network with. That's more people to catch different skill sets, catch different things that you say, and just more people to be on your side if you crush the interview. So think about it that way too.
Sarah has a really good question too here. What if you really like the job in the company but are fresh out of college? I get a lot of students or freshly graduated students that will email me and express their interest and send me their resume and cover letter. And this is just what I do. I always respond back, even if I don't have a position available, but I will always have coffee with you because you took the initiative to reach out. I'll get to know you a little bit. It won't be a formal interview. And then I will direct you into some of my network that I know is looking. So don't hesitate to make those connections and be bold and, show that you're willing to talk to people.
I love that, Nikki. I think that that's really awesome. And I think you're one of a kind when it comes to that.
Yeah, so I will say, don't get surprised if nobody answers you, but I'm just saying that's me.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. But I would say if you're fresh out of college, maybe if you do have coffee with somebody like Nikki, or you take a look at some of those jobs that you're specifically interested in, look at some of those qualifications that they're looking for, and try to go after roles that are entry level that would meet those qualifications in a year or 2 years or 3 years. I have a session tomorrow where I'm going to talk about, it's happiness over salary. And sometimes when you come out of school, you're not going to get your dream job. It's just the reality. You got to work towards that dream job sometimes. And in order to get there, you got to work hard and grind in some of those other roles that will help you get there. So take a look at those requirements and qualifications. Maybe you talked to Nikki and she said, you know, in a couple of years, I'm anticipating this type of growth in my organization, and this is what I'm going to be looking for. Take that to heart and really, you know, take a class on Adobe, or, you know, take a speaking class, or whatever it's going to do to advance yourself. That will only help you get more prepared for that dream job when it does become open or you do become qualified. How far in advance of graduation should you apply? That's a great question, Mark. Now, working at PNC and some of our competitors, such as the Big Four and some other banks, they start posting those full-time roles in July. So it's never too early to start looking. Just keep in mind, though, if you do interview in November and they say we need somebody for January, you know, again, stay connected with that person, foster the relationship, but just know that that might happen. But some of those larger organizations do post a lot of the development programs, the rotation programs starting in July and August. It seems like every year it's getting earlier and earlier. It's just crazy. But there's nothing wrong with starting to look in March and April either. So I always have Indeed on my phone, no matter if I love my job or if I'm looking. It never hurts to take a look to see what's out there. Something might surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question here. I'm a management major. What kind of job position would you recommend first?
You want to go, Nikki, or do you want me to?
Go for it. Do you have an answer?
So what I would say is, I'm assuming that you're a business major, Sarah. And if there were any specific classes that stuck out to you, or you felt like you really came easy to you, or you really enjoyed, maybe try a career in those areas first. I'm not sure the curriculum with management in particular, but what I would say is, you know, maybe you've had an internship and you really enjoyed that, or maybe you had an internship and realized that's not the direction you want to take. You know, try to pick up on things. Maybe you're involved on campus or virtually on campus right now, and you really like a certain aspect of an organization or club that you're involved with. So try to pick up on those types of things, but also pay attention to what you don't enjoy. So I hope that that's helpful. Nikki, I don't know if you have anything to add.
What I would look for, and again, we go back to start to research early on Indeed and see what's out there, and see what's appealing, and apply to get those interviews, and that'll kind of help you just like narrow that down. It's not a bad thing to cast a wide net when you're first graduating, and then when you get into those interviews, you'll kind of get a sense of the day-to-day a little bit more, and then that'll help you narrow down your search slightly.
And I'll throw a plug in there. Make sure you visit your career center to give you some additional tips on identifying some type of different positions that would be a good match for you as well.
Absolutely.
It looks like we'd have another question here. How much does it affect your chances of landing the job if you are visually nervous, or are most interviewers understanding of the fact that these are new graduates that are new to this?
I would say that goes back to preparation and practice. Everybody's nervous for an interview. And if you're not nervous, that might mean that this isn't the right opportunity for you. I had a little bit of jitters coming on here and presenting to you guys. So, I mean, you're nervous for what you're passionate about and what you're excited about. So I would say, we know you're nervous. Sometimes we're nervous going into those things. We want to make sure that it's the right fit, right? So I would say visually nervous, you know, practice as much as you can, plan as much as you can. That'll only help bring those nerves down. I would say it's not necessarily an understanding from a new graduate perspective, but we understand that there is a bit of nerves there.
Yeah, my other recommendation is too, it's not a bad thing if you need to pause and breathe. If you get a little nervous, I will give you that second. But I do want to warn anybody that is thinking about an agency job. I do try to stress you out a little bit in my interviews. Not so much interns, but if you're coming in, say, as like an account manager, I do need to understand that you can have tough conversations because clients are not easy on you. So I do experiment a little bit to see if I can stress you out a little bit, see if you can contain yourself. And then after that, if you pass that test, then we get into the fun stuff. So
and you
that's
have to
also
know
a warning
yourself
too. Yeah.
You have to know yourself too. So if you play with a hair tie when you're nervous, don't wear one. If you know that when you talk, you need a bottle of water, bring one with you. Like, just know yourself and how to calm yourself down. Again, we understand that you're nervous. I'm always hot. I run hot all the time. So I might take my suit jacket off to make myself more comfortable. If that's going to help me perform in my interview better, I'm going to do it. You got to be a little bit selfish in that aspect of time. Pausing is a great suggestion as well. Don't rush your answers. Don't just blurt things out because you're nervous. Really be intentional with everything you're doing in your interview.
Great. Any additional questions coming through? I'm not sure just yet, but I will go ahead in the meantime, again, put it in the chat for you to complete the survey. If you do have a question, go ahead and put that in the chat right now. But in the meantime, I do want to thank everyone for attending, but also special thanks to both Chelsea and Nikki for sharing such great tips, really good information. And just like our previous sessions, I think Mark can probably attest to this as well. We're working in these fields and we're trying to keep up to date on different things. And it's nice to get additional fresh tips from the employer directly. So it's really helpful for both of us. And if you are interested, if you do have questions, please reach out to your career centers if they have additional questions that you might have. If you were trying to reach out to to either Nikki or Chelsea, we can we can get you in contact with them, or at least relay information to them if they don't have their information to share. But thank you all so much. I do see Chelsea did put her information in the chat. So in case anybody does want to reach out to her directly, you can do so.
Doing that now too.
Okay, and Nikki is doing the same. Thank you both. Mark, do you have any additional things that you would like to add?
Well, again, thanks to our presenters, but also thanks to all of you students. I mean, this really shows your interest in doing this, and I can't say enough. I think one of the conversations you can always have, if you should ever meet Chelsea or Nikki, is I went to your professional development series, and I was one of the ones that asked you the questions about how to put together a technical portfolio. I always tell students, again, re-emphasize, know something about the company. And if you get on their website, every company I've ever seen has new news, what we're doing. They'll phrase it different ways. And if that's all the time you have to check, find out what is new so you can have a conversation to begin with. So again, my thanks to both of you. And again, to you students, please come see us. Many of you are going to only be able to see us virtually, but we're here to help. And we certainly hope that next semester is going to be a better one. So again, thank everybody, and we wish you all a great week and great careers.
Great. Thank you so much. Everyone, thank you. And I'm going to stop recording and we'll see you all. Hopefully, we get to meet with you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.